And one of the reasons, Jake, that I was so fascinated by wanting to see this in the first place is because I have sat down with Brian De Palma many times, and I know what an amazing guy he is and what a great storyteller he is. So I was just like, wow, finally, somebody got to sit down and pick his brain. How amazing. For you and Noah, how did this basically all come about?
It really comes out of from our friendship with him. We spent known Brian for over 10 years. No, even longer. We had these independent friendships with Brian. And then we sort of merged all the friendships and started spending a lot of time, the three of us. And after maybe a year or 2 years of consistent dinners with Brian, where it always result in us asking him a million questions and having, a million great answers and most unexpected sort of great advice and all sort of stuff. And we sort of turned to each other and said, what if we could get him to talk with us on film the way he talks with us at dinner? He doesn't talk to a lot of people like this. And it would just be so valuable in general. Not even thinking of it necessarily even as a movie, but thinking of we've got to just have it. We need this on record. It's
for posterity type thing,
whatever. And so we asked him, and he was up for it, and we put it together very quickly. And we filmed it in my living room. Yeah. And
how long did it take? Because I think I noticed he was pretty much wearing the same thing throughout.
Well, he's very good with his own wardrobe. That was, he's had him wear the same thing and come back. And he has a couple of those outfits.
Right, his safari jacket.
It was that's 6 days. It ended up being about 30 hours, 30 or 40 hours.
Wow.
And that's really what drove it. It was if we can, and because we have this sort of warm relationship, he really brought the same feeling to the interviews, if you can call them that. It's really conversation.
Yes.
As the kind of conversation we would have if we were at a restaurant in New York or something.
Amazing. And so he was completely open to it, no problem at all.
No, totally up for it.
And what fascinated me too was all the early footage and pictures and everything that you were able to use. And I always go wow, that people keep all this and document it, and so that he just kind of let you come into his home and here's what you need.
And most of the stuff, there are very few items, I feel that are actually from Brian. A lot of that stuff is, a lot of that stuff you can sort of find, or maybe got some stuff from universities, got some stuff from friends, got some stuff from his brother. So it's a lot of that.
Amazing. And how long, when you have this 30 hours worth of material, and now that's the easy part. The hard part is now, how do you shave it down to an under 2 hour film?
And we had both, and it took us a long time to get to doing it. I had been away, we had both been doing different things. I finished a movie right as Noah started shooting the movie.
Right.
There was those sorts of things where then we were, whatever, it's 2 years ago now, where we both sort of stopped for a minute. And said, well, now we have the time. It took about a year to put it together.
Wow. And these were done about, 5 years ago, right? The actual interviews.
5 years from when we finished. Maybe just 6 now, almost 6 now.
Yeah. Oh my goodness, that's amazing. So you sit down with them and you start, as you say, you guys were friends, you had these dinners and everything, but what was there ultimately anything that he started to talk about that really kind of surprised you or, shocked you about some of the stories of his filmmaking years?
I think, no, but the thing is the surprising thing is, it's an ever-present quality to the way that he speaks, because he's unguarded.
Yeah.
He's really telling it to you the way he experienced it. So, so when you're going through Bonfire of the Vanities or something, and then he's telling you about, Julie Solomon or somebody being on the set, and then writing this book and eviscerating the movie, they say, but Brian, didn't you have dinner with Julie a month ago? Or you're so friends with me? And he said, well, everything she said is true. No, but that's an amazing quality. You know what I mean? It's
he does. He really wears his heart on his sleeve, no question.
Oh, it's an unusual thing to I don't know what I don't know what the quality is exactly, but it's some sort of dedication to the truth or something above everything else, that he can see the difference between what's true and what's cruel. Do you know what I mean? They're not.
Yes.
And that's, it's very, I don't know too many people who can do that.
And, I'm watching and I look at this picture of him, the one that really stands out for me, and you've got Spielberg and De Palma and Scorsese and Lucas and Coppola, like they're all, the buddies, kind of the rat pack of their time, I guess, of filmmakers. And then you look at De Palma, and to me it's like even though he's made such amazing films, he was the one that was always ostracized and kind of taken out of that group because he was so, he was the artiste. I guess that's how I see him.
Well, I mean, he's certainly, being driven by like the muse in a way that where just because there's a gigantic success, he doesn't necessarily follow it with like an even bigger budgeted thing. He is often just moving to the next thing that's sort of on his mind.
Right.
So, within a few years of making Mission Impossible, he goes and he's making, Femme Fatale.
Yeah.
Which couldn't be more different. Again, it's totally personal filmmaking. These are scripts he's writing himself. So it's just he's driven by something that's unique.
Very unique. That's definitely. And then you can't picture half of his. When he was saying that he almost didn't cast Sissy Spacek, and like, who was she?
Exactly.
She worked on some little costume or whatever, set designing, and then oh my God, you can't picture her not in that film.
Of course.
And the stuff that he came up with, like the split screen, and he really was ahead of his time.
Oh, very much so.
Does he, I'm sure he's obviously seen this film, and what's his vision of him watching himself telling these stories and watching the way that you guys edited it to, his great films?
Well, I know he likes it, and he would tell us if he didn't.
Yeah, I'm sure.
And I remember when we sort of set him up in the editing room to watch it, and I was going to leave and come back over to finish it, and he was like, no, sit down, get out your pen, I want to, if there's anything I want to address right now. And we watched it together. I was so nervous to show it to him, and he just watched it, and by the end he really liked it.
Good.
And almost could talk about it as if it weren't about him in a way, which is totally in line with him.
Yeah, and what I found fascinating too is that you only used his voice. You didn't have anybody else talking about him. That obviously was a deliberate choice.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's something so special, valuable, and lucky to have, like, the creative force you value so highly, willing to talk to you about their experience of anything, whatever you're asking them about. Like, who else do you need, really? It's one thing if the person you're making a film about is dead or something.
Yeah.
Then you have all these people to, validate the person by their own stature and opinion and sorts of stuff like that. But for what we were interested in, it's like we're much more interested in the way Brian saw it.
Yeah. See, I wish more people would do films about directors like this. Because for me, I've been doing this job a long time.
No.
And for me, my whole career, I've always loved talking to directors more than I have the actual actors. Because they just have so much to say. And so these stories of how they put these films together. And it bugs me that you have somebody like, for example, a Joel Schumacher, who I've been after for years, just like, sit down and tell us your story.
Joel, great.
Hello, and I actually approached him almost 10 years ago, and I said, let me write your book. Like, you really have stories to...
Exactly, like Joel starts doing the windows of Bendels or something, right?
Yeah, yes, he did costumes, he did for Woody Allen, right?
They were the best costumes ever.
And then you just look at his life and what he's been through and being ostracized because he was gay. There's just, besides his films, there's just so much. So for you to have done this, like, thank you. Like, do you think that you might approach somebody else? And, this is good stuff. I think people really need to see, and like you say, put them down for posterity, if anything.
We'd like to, but, I think one of the reasons, and maybe it's the biggest reason this one works, is because there's this history and there's this way of communicating and everything else. Like, I don't know, like, I'm sure there are people who are very close with other great filmmakers, and they may be more well suited to doing it, only because that's such a big part of it, because it's that thing where you're not, I don't want to speak for Brian, but I would imagine he's not guarding the responses
Yes.
the way you're going to with somebody you don't know.
Well, here's one for you.
Yeah.
Would you ever consider doing something on your mom? Because what a fascinating life she's had, and your dad.
Yeah.
Like, man,
Probably not.
too close.
Yeah, I guess so. It's like, yeah, I don't know. Well, I can't see it, but I'd never say never.
See, I would love to see something on Blythe
Yeah.
Manor. Like, what a fascinating, amazing life she's had. And then your
Oh,
dad,
no,
like,
by the way, I would too.
Yeah.
I'm just probably not the best person to do it.
yeah, so I get it.
So,
I get
mean,
it.
no, I'd like to see it as well.
Yeah, you can't, there's certain times you can't argue with your mom, mom is right all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that would be amazing. Because, was it ever in your history that you didn't think that you would ever go into entertainment, given the fact that you've come from this entertainment, but dad, great producer and director, or was it always kind of in the cards for you?
I don't know. I'd like to think there was a time where I wasn't going to do it, but I don't know if that's accurate. I mean, I had other interests, but most of my interests were really movie-based.
Yeah.
Even though I was into like special effects, monster makeup, and that sort of stuff as a kid, that's where my primary interest in movies sort of came from.
Right.
Rick Baker or Dick Smith or something. But I wasn't good at it.
Did you go to sets when you were a kid, like hang out with your dad?
Yeah, we'd go to like the White Shadow set when I
Right.
was really little, and the St. Elsewhere set a bit. But by then we'd moved to New York, and there was sort of less of that. And I mean, Brian's a major reason why I fell in love with movies, because I was so in love with horror movies and visual effects and things, and Brian was like the first director where it was like, this movie is great and it's got all this stuff in it I love.
Yeah.
It's got it's like both, and then you could go down the rabbit hole on a director like one does when they first find a movie and then you watch all the rest of them, and then of course after the world opens up into such a richer place than just one thing that you're segueing with your interest as a kid. I think it's still the best way into finding movies.
Oh, yeah.
Just watch them all.
Oh, for sure. So after doing this and having spent so much time with Brian, do you have a favorite of his films that you really stands out for you?
No, that's so hard. A favorite? I couldn't say I have a favorite. So I love them all for totally different reasons, but the one I keep saying, the one that's really been on my mind, and I feel like it's like in some ways the most beautiful expression of his history into the movies, is Carlito's Way.
Yes.
Just so well made and really beautiful, really emotional. It's like my favorite Pacino performance. I just love it.
Or do you look at any of his films now differently after knowing some of these stories?
Yeah, but not from like a personal, less about like things I learned from his family life or those sorts of things. It's funny, in a way, like I would have thought, oh, those would be the things that would maybe go back, but in a lot of ways it's like technical things I didn't know of,
right.
like the double in Dressed to Kill, like
Yes.
Michael Caine's double, using Michael Caine so seldom in the actual makeup. That I found myself going back, going, that's such a good idea. Just in general, that's such a good idea. You should get a look-alike and then have that. So it's like, it's them, but it's not them.
Yeah.
Maybe that's the way to do this, like as a bigger idea for making something.
Yeah, because I now want to go back and look at some of these movies and watch them and probably
Really?
look at them in a different way. But the story that really shook me to the core was the Casualties of War, like the way that Sean Penn treated Michael J. Fox. Who the heck treats Michael J. Fox in such a bad way? That story to me was, and then he goes and hires him a few years later for Carlito's Way. Like he had worked with Sean,
Well,
came right out and expressed what he felt about him, and then there you go. I mean, no, he's a great actor, don't get me wrong, he's one of my favorites, but to trash our Canadian icon,
oh yes, Michael Isabel. It's a work. It's a set. It's what happens on set.
very method.
Yeah. I don't know.
That story for me was just like, wow. I kept looking at the TV going, holy shit, that's really, it's very good. Well, like I say, you've done an amazing job, you and Noah, on this film, and congratulations.
So
and what's next? I know you're a new dad, and so you're just focusing on that, I guess, right now.
I was directing a TV show called *Halt and Catch Fire*.
Yes, we love that with Lee Pace.
I think it's great.
Yeah.
No, and then the next fiction movie I'll probably be doing this time next year.
Good. So maybe we'll have you at our Toronto Film Festival.
Great. I'd love to come.
That would be